How might your life have been different if there was a religion for you? A religion that affirmed you as a woman, as equal to man and made in the image of God. A religion that acknowledged your menstrual cycle as a sacred part of creation, your body and sexuality blessed, and validated the feminine voice of God as the most highest, and the care and sustainability of natural resources and non-human life as the highest goal of mankind. How might your life have been different? Welcome to Heretica, her eco-feminist theology educational podcast. My name is Eleanor and I am the podcast creator. Today's podcast will be focused on revealing more findings on why women are combining goddess spirituality with Christianity. I will be referring to a paper by Mary Ann Beavis called Christian Goddess Spirituality and Theology. Beginning with the word theology as opposed to using theology. The term theology was coined by Canadian professor of religious studies Naomi Goldenberg to refer to academic discourse in her book, The Changing of the Gods, Feminism and the End of Traditional Religions, and an often quoted definition is reflection on the divine in feminine and feminist terms. To date, the term theology has almost exclusively been used to refer to a Goddessian enterprise. That's a person who worships, honors only the feminine face of the divine, as distinct from feminist theology that reconstructs traditional Christianity and blends it with goddess traditions. However, feminist theology and theology have common roots in the 1970s. When it comes to the blend of Christianity and Goddessianism, it is known as Christo-pagan. Other blends can be Christian Goddessian without the neo-pagan aspect, that is with Wicca, and others create a blend of esoteric, gnostic, speculative, which stresses the importance of the individual effort to gain spiritual knowledge and realize the divine within existence. Ann Beavis points out the distinction between Christo-pagan Wiccan, Christian Goddessian, and Gnostic esoteric should not imply that these are three competing spiritualities. Rather, they are more like intersecting spiritual paths where travelers often meet, share, and journey together for parts of the way. This is not a new religious movement, but part of a contemporary religious trend. An example of pagan Christianity exists with Her Church, which is a Lutheran church in San Francisco, and you can attend online through Zoom. I have attended a few times, and they really do a great job in blending Christian ecofeminism. Their website is herchurch.org, and I will add the link to the notes. Mary Ann Beavis makes note of the Her Church pagan Christianity by stating a response from an attendee. The ritual, she says, begins with a calling down of the spirits of the four directions, a borrowing from Wicca and other traditions, continues with the reading of Bible sections that praise Earth, and ends with worshippers weaving a communal web. Such a ritual certainly pushes Christianity to its limits. For her research, Beavis interviewed 100 women between the ages of 22 and 78 from North America that blended Christianity with goddess worship and named her group Christian Goddess Spirituality. She also further included a focus group discussion with other women in person, and together she developed her findings. Respondents, meaning those that were interested in taking part in her study, frequently mentioned that they had little opportunity to speak about their personal spiritual lives and welcomed the opportunity to do so, to hear themselves. This indicates just how oppressed the feminine voice of God is, both within religion and culture, and only through such studies are women given a voice to externalize what is internally true for them. This podcast is my own reflection of this. It's an opportunity for me to voice my own knowing of God or the divine in its feminine expression and self-realization. The feminine has in itself, as I feel, a life force of its own. But I tend to intertwine it with the masculine, as that is how I find it best expresses itself for me. Notable is how in the previous paper we explored how women who have experienced gender-based violence draw in the feminine divine for healing and empowerment. This is an example of how we just worship the divine, feminine only. Yet, as with everything, as we heal and empower ourselves, we can gradually reacquaint ourselves with the divine masculine internal energy and realize that it is not designed to harm. That is man-made expression of a patriarchal culture known in mainstream as toxic masculinity. In other words, the masculine and feminine divine energies are expressed internally in harmony and peacefully. Hence, a Goddessian journey could be exactly what woman would need to become whole again, and that is why women can adopt this path, and rightfully so. So how women do blend their religious beliefs differs. For example, goddess feminism is for women who identify as feminists. Yet, not all women who worship the goddess are feminists and prefer the term goddess spirituality. Some regard the term goddess positively, while others are more comfortable speaking of the female, feminine divine, or sacred feminine. Others consider themselves as Christian, Wiccan, or Christo-pagan, but many, based on the studies' findings, did not regard these terms as descriptive of their spiritualities, preferring interspirituality or hyphenated Christianity or multiple religious belonging to describe the mixing and matching of elements from distinct religious traditions. While some genuinely do consciously synthesize elements of Christianity and goddess spirituality into a more or less coherent spirituality, others experience them side by side, attending church on Sunday and engaging in goddess-related activities privately or in a group setting. The attitude to religion here is less like the compartmentalized notion of separate religions in the West than it resembles the East Asian attitude, where traditions which may seem quite opposite to each other, like Taoism and Confucianism, but in fact coexist as complementary value systems, and a person's thought and actions may encompass both streams. Perhaps complementary religious practice would be the best way to describe it. So from this we can see that there is multiple terms used to describe this bringing together of religious ideas, highlighting how it is individual and multifaceted. Exploring the term Christian theology, where the entry point for a practitioner is the divine as goddess, as opposed to Christian feminist theology, which re-examines Christian scriptures. The difference in approach can occur because for some, the fear of overstepping the boundaries of approved forms of Christian discourse are already stretched to the breaking point by feminist theology. So this is interesting, the term fear of overstepping the boundaries of approved forms of Christian discourse is what prohibits women from embracing the goddess as divine. A response to this, who considered the divine as feminine in the paper, said, "Goddess is the feminine form of the word God, and if God is portrayed in female terms, like mother, midwife, or Sophia in the Bible and Christian tradition, then it should be feasible to speak of the divine as goddess and of Christian academic discourse on the female divine as theology. So this deems some reflection. Do you have fear in stretching yourself outside of the approved forms of Christian discourse? Are you comfortable or not with referring to the divine as female, as the goddess within a Christian context? How does that feel internally? Do you feel tension or comfort with a Christian goddess? Interestingly, most women stated the interviewees had formulated their ideas about the female divine in relation to Christianity, as one of them put it, from tough personal experience. In terms of literary influences, they were more likely to have read the works of Starhawk, Margaret Starbird, or Dan Brown, or to have consulted online sources than to have read Elizabeth Schultz of Fiorenza, Rosemary Radford Werther, or Carol Christ. Here I would like to make a point that before I entered academia to do my master's in religious studies, I was also reading the more mainstream books. Once I began my master's in theology and then gender studies, I was amazed at the research I was reading and the academic authors I had never heard of, especially the ones mentioned above, which completely changed how I viewed and understood feminist theology. So this is the reason I'm using academic papers and books in my podcasts. My goal is to bring the amazing research and knowledge sitting in academia into mainstream. In the notes, I will add the names of these 3 academics, and you can choose to search their names online to read some of their ideas or to find books they have written and may interest you. It is also good, if you're interested in a topic, to also use Google Scholar. Although papers are not open access, you can perhaps find them through your local library through sort of the library's online e-resources. And equally, when you visit bookstores, have a look at the academic section where theses are published. So these are just a few ideas of how you can pursue on your own more the academic side of feminist theology, which is very, very interesting. So back to the paper. A few of the participants in this research had been ordained as priestesses of one goddess or another and did not see any contradiction in self-identifying as Christian. So here we see again this idea of cognitive dissonance, which is the goal of this blending, to move one out of any internal religious conflict. And for some women, like me, this requires blending the goddess with Christianity, and we see that it doesn't require one to negate Christianity altogether. Other sentiments from the participants included holding together a theology of the one and the many. Though there is one God, that deity, force, energy may be expressed in many different ways. For example, through specific deities or places. Another response states, an inclusive as opposed to an exclusive monotheism, a notion that all the goddesses and gods are one, rather than that there is only one God and no other. For example, Mary and Kali were different aspects of the feminine divine. So in inclusive, we see that what they are saying is that the feminine divine, like Mary and Kali, are aspects of that feminine divine. So I understand as that saying that within the one, there is also many expressions, and that is why we can create an individual sense of religion, as opposed to everyone adhering to one God expression which exists in traditional Christianity. Another respondent explained, the goddess who I feel very close to right now is Kuan Yin, the goddess of compassion. The Celtic goddess Anu I also feel close to. I haven't gone through individual goddesses by name. As I am falling asleep, I pray to Mary, Teresa of Avila, and the divine goddess to bless the world and heal the suffering. Is it all one entity, and these are just aspects of the goddess? There is such splendor in a head of lettuce. I think of the divine like that. Each piece you pull off isn't like the other, but it is a whole. So that's an interesting metaphor from one of the participants. Other comments include, both biblical and non-Christian expressions of the goddess are simply embodiments of one sacred divine. For those who the goddess is seen as having both male and female qualities, the comments included, the creator God must encompass both masculine and feminine. One practitioner admitted that she still prayed to a male god sometimes, when I need male strength, when I need male energy. Another was uncomfortable with the word goddess because it seems to divide into male and female, and I feel that God is more of a bringing together. Another spoke of feeling more nurtured by a Christian goddessness that combines the feminine and the masculine. It feels so much more balanced. Another observed that if humans are created in the divine image, then God must have male and female attributes. Many spoke of the need for more balance in Christian notions of deity, male and female, Jesus and Mary or Mary Magdalene, God and Goddess. Goddess spirituality has a function as a more balanced way to understand who Christ is. I understand Christ as a cosmic presence, not just a male person. When it comes to non-Christian Goddessians, they tend to see Goddess as many and as one, as immanent and transcendent, as the female divine within and without. However, a few interviewees who self-identified as Christo-pagan or Christian Wiccan insisted that they were polytheists, and on the importance of the gender polarity between goddess and god. One attendant said, my spirituality includes belief in the divine androgyny, so that's neither female nor male, it doesn't have a gender. Another said, I need the dialogue of polytheism of the gods and goddesses of having their own mysteries. Respondents overall indicated that their relationship to the female divine was more important than their Christian identity, in the sense that if they had to make a choice between one and the other, they would choose the female divine, since as one respondent put it, Christianity is simply part of the history of the goddess. For those that did blend, they tend to reconceptualize figures such as Eve and Mary as goddesses, making them easy to celebrate in a Christian context. Practitioners familiar with the Bible tend to see biblical women and female saints as expressions of the divine, especially but not only Mary Magdalene and the Mother Mary. Other biblical figures specifically mentioned by interviewees were Ruth, Hannah, Esther, Martha, and Mary of Bethany and Eve. Saints specifically mentioned were Anne, the mother of Mary, Joan of Arc, Teresa of Avila, Hildegard of Bingen, and Bridget of Ireland, a Celtic goddess transformed into a saint in Irish Catholicism. Many resonated with biblically related female personifications of the divine, such as Sophia, Shekinah, Holy Spirit, and Ruach, although few related to the Hebrew goddess Asherah. However, many respondents felt that the goddess and women had been suppressed by the biblical authors. Some participants preferred to relate to the female divine as Mother or Mother Earth. There was a strong tendency for respondents to see Jesus as a human teacher, model, and guide, although a significant number regarded Jesus as divine, and for a minority of respondents, he was not an important spiritual figure. One young Christo-pagan woman who had been raised in a coven and subsequently joined a church delightfully described Jesus as the oak and the holy king. Many regarded Mary Magdalene as Jesus' wife, and one Christian Wiccan responded had adopted Jesus and Mary Magdalene as her chosen twin deities to embody the whole God, a representation of the polarity that is the source of life on Earth. Interview participants were asked two related questions: what elements they thought Christianity and goddess spirituality have in common, and how their worldviews, values, and beliefs differed from what they perceived as mainstream or traditional Christianity. Many participants were convinced that the female divine was deeply entrenched in Christian tradition. Many mentioned Christian values such as love, peace, justice, forgiveness, compassion as highly compatible with goddess spirituality. At their best, both value divine and human love, ethical treatment of others, both human and non-human, respect for life and nature, a sense of the divine in everyday life. Others said that the commonalities were belief in a life beyond materialism, the practice of prayer, and a humanistic outlook. One said the main thing they both share is the longing for something more than the materialistic life. Through that, Christianity and goddess spirituality have everything in common: the same God, the same Holy Spirit. The feminine side was purposefully erased by man. Men made a point to leave women out of it. So many expressed the view that the teachings of Jesus in particular were consistent with the goddess. Jesus was not a Christian, one said. Whatever pure teaching or knowledge may have sprung from Jesus, that it would have been quite different from what his followers did. Because his teachings were pure, he would have a place for God the Mother. I have no trouble, one said, blending that in my mind. One participant even speculated that if Jesus was alive today, he would be part of a goddess community. Christian and goddess spirituality mesh perfectly because Christianity has pagan roots. The two have always been intertwined. A few mention mysticism as common to the goddess and Christian traditions. One participant referred to Christian women mystics who invited a sacred feminine presence or knew of one. Another participant mentioned women mystics as something common to goddess spirituality and Christianity. Another saw mysticism as at the heart of all religions. In general, interviewees regarded mystics and mysticism possible. Christianity and Buddhism and Islamic mysticism all have the same message, one said. It seems like when you get into the real mystical, that is where you find the feminine, another noticed. There is a much more healthy version from mystics. When I experience Mary Magdalene and her energy, she's very powerful. She's very much a mystic. Several interviewees described a kind of Christianity plus, like a participant who felt that she had received a lot of good from the church, but that she had to add stuff. One participant integrated her goddess spirituality by just making Christianity move over. Another participant described Christianity as a framework or foundation for her spirituality. She says, I could have done it with Buddhism or Islam or even Judaism. Since Christianity as a whole is familiar, I can easily now move out of these things, and I still have a strong, solid structure, and I can build it the way I need it to be built. Another participant regarded Christianity and goddess spirituality as complementary rather than competitive. One asserted that she had her own synthesis, that she didn't feel the need to impose on anyone else, and objected to this cookie-cutter religion thing where there is only one true thing. The question of how interviewees perceive the difference between goddess spirituality and mainstream or traditional Christianity evoked a range of responses. Although there was considerable agreement that the female divine was consistent with the Christian tradition, many acknowledged that it had been suppressed and continued to be downplayed. Traditional Christianity puts heed to everything and even draws God as male. A lot of people I hear talk at church are still sexist in my opinion, a respondent said. Models of church that relied on patriarchy, dominance, and the marginalization of women were specifically mentioned as contrary to goddess spirituality. The exclusion of women from priesthood was mentioned by several. One said, "The whole idea that you have to be a male to be a priest drives me crazy." Another said, "I think women should be priests and have equal roles in running the church." One more person said, "The organized hierarchies in Christianity and Judaism are willing to consider women as members, but they won't allow them to have a role as priestesses or leaders." Another widely agreed upon theme was that they were more open to other religions, cultures, and beliefs than mainstream Christians, but also more openness to homosexuality, gay, and transgender. One practitioner described herself as having a very earthy attitude towards sexuality and being angered by sexual repression. Some references were made to about fundamentalist evangelicals, stating how they didn't care about the feminine at all. More were devoted to Christian churches that had a more liberal social justice streak and not patriarchal. When it came to sin, they preferred the idea of original blessing to the traditional doctrine of original sin. There were women that stated that they didn't buy into original sin, where children come in evil. When it comes to salvation, respondents said, "As I've grown older and know that I do have sins, I feel that I am responsible for them myself, and that I'm not saved by a man who died on the cross." Others were critical of traditional doctrines of salvation. Christianity still teaches that salvation is in the afterlife. Salvation to me is saving our earth, saving children who are starving, saving women in Afghanistan, saving me from beating myself up when I make a mistake. In addition to rejecting Christian exclusively, interviewees criticized the doctrines of heaven, hell, and a pushing God. One said, "If there is a God that created the earth and its inhabitants, and if this is a God of love, then God is not giving to limit salvation to those who believe Jesus is Christ and the Son of God." Another said, "In the church I was brought up in, we had the feeling that the earth is a temporary place, and our main home is in heaven. I don't believe that anymore. I don't believe there is only one way to heaven on the next life. I think that the focus on who's going to heaven and who's going to hell has really distracted us from the main message." Several related the rejection of traditional doctrines of otherworldly salvation to their concern for the earth. One noted that the idea that the earth was expandable, to be devalued or trash because of the focus on the afterlife had been very terrible for the earth. One participant had been brought up to believe that the earth was a temporary staging ground for heaven. But now she felt that the one mission of Goddess and the people is to do what we can to protect the earth from rape and so forth. Another participant observed that what is missing in the world today is respect for the earth as our mother. And one cited her belief in total inclusivity of creation and to see the holiness in all of that. A participant was quoted as saying, "I reject atonement theology, the excessive valorization of self-sacrifice, the divinity of Christ, patriarchy, notions of an exclusively male God, the alignment of Christianity with social power elites, Christian exclusivism, the otherworldly, dualistic orientation of some forms of Christianity." So the question as to whether fusing is a permanent spiritual option or whether it constitutes a transitional phase between Christianity and full-blown goddess, the paper found that it depends on the individual. So conclusions suggest the question as to whether the church, or at least parts of it, have the ability to incorporate alternative spiritualities into itself, as due to this real need for women to hear and express the feminine voice of God, will have important ramifications for the future of Christianity. And I tend to agree that the church needs to allow the voice of the feminine voice of the God and goddess, and stop suppressing it as it has been doing for so long, because it's the cause of existential challenges for women of faith. And it's also important that priests and pastors start to speak from the pulpit about environmental issues. Christianity as it is not of service to many people, and even men who are not interested in this dominating of women attitudes and consequently of the earth. I feel that we are tired of conflict, wars, destruction, illnesses, mental challenges. We want to live whole and inclusive lives. And this exclusion of the feminine voice of God is a root cause of many of these challenges we face, as it allows for unwholesome elitist behaviors to flourish in the name of God and as if ordained by God. An example of this being Genesis and the use of the word dominion over the earth. Yet through feminist theology or goddess spirituality, we awaken to the fact that this is not the case. No God would state that we should dominate and kill animals at the rate that we are doing so, or destroy ecology, leading to the current climate crisis. But we are to take care and live in harmony with all living creatures and allow our ecology to flourish, as we are interdependent. The well-being of nature can affect the well-being of individuals, and we should be creating non-violent lives. Upon finishing this podcast, perhaps make it a goal this week to engage in a life-giving act towards yourself or others. Choose that life-giving act upon self-reflection. Thank you once again for listening. Until next time. How might your life have been different if there was a religion for you? A religion that affirmed you as a woman, as equal to man, and made in the image of God. How might your life have been different? Heretica, her eco-feminist theology educational podcast.